There you go.
It's still a little nippy out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's only 55. I thought it was going to get warmer today.
That's as warm as you want it to be, Kelly. You like this stuff.
That's true. I do.
See, I want
Okay.
it to be warmer.
All right.
Here we are, Finance Committee meeting, April 16th. It's 2:02 p.m. We have 4 attended topics on the agenda for today. First one I thought we would do would be the resource officer, the school resource officer. So that's why Chief is here to help guide us through. You guys got the document he sent to you, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I have forwarded on to you guys.
Yep.
So that's sort of the background. Chief, I don't know if you want to just give a little highlight about what's going on here.
Yeah, just real quick, I think everybody's aware, but obviously Officer Romano is in need of insurance and would like to be able to get on our plan, which we've figured out how that can happen by Officer Romano's he's willing to give up $4 of his hourly rate to put in to help pay for the premium on the insurance, and then that generates about $8,300 and some dollars, 8320.
8320.
8320, and then the school has agreed to pay $8,000 more a year, which will offset the cost of the insurance. And what I need is for the classification to be changed from a part-time position to a full-time position. And if we can get that, if you guys agree on that today and we get the report in, if we can get that changed in the ordinance, at the next council meeting under an emergency, that'd be great. I do have one other thing too. I do have a short letter here, email from Lance Hollander from the school that documents the fact that they are willing to pay the other the additional $8,000. And as you know, they pay 80% of the salary, and we pay 20, but they're going to pay the additional $8,000 to offset the cost of the insurance. So basically, the cost of the insurance is not going to, with Fred basically paying a little over half of what the premium is himself by giving up that $4 an hour, and then the school paying the other $8,000 per year. The insurance for Fred is not going to cost the village any money.
Well, actually, Chief, I think it costs us a little bit, but it's not a lot. It's like about $1,700 in total for the whole year.
Okay.
But,
all right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because what Joni had come up with, you said, it was $1,600 per month. That's assuming the goal plan. So I followed through on that.
Right. Right.
And she includes in there as well the HSA contribution. So
correct.
I did the math and I came down to it's about $1,700, a little under, just under $1,700 for the village net cost for this thing.
Yeah, and what I wanted to bring up too, also, Rob, was the fact that we use Fred in the summertime anyway to help plug in shifts that were short because most people take their vacation in the summer. So we're able to plug him in there at that $23 an hour versus the full-time hourly rate of time and a half, which saves us a bunch of money that way on potentially having to pay overtime to cover the shifts. So it's definitely a win-win situation for the school and also for the village also here. So
Kelly and Joe, did you guys have any questions for Chief? I talked to him before when he first brought this up and asked if we could put it into a committee. So he's answered my questions.
Well, I spoke with Chief yesterday, and one of the things that we talked about was actually getting something from the school, sign an agreement that they would indeed pay that other $8,000. So I'm good. That's been taken care of. So my questions have been answered.
Yeah, and I also talked with Joe briefly yesterday too. So I think unless you guys have any other questions, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I got a 2-word response. I'm good. Let's go.
Okay, so all those in favor of changing the, we'll make a recommendation to council to change Officer Romano's position from part-time to full-time so that he can sign up for the healthcare benefits. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? I didn't hear anything, so, okay.
All right, I think I'm out, right?
Yeah, you are. So I will, Chief, I'm gonna write up the Finance Committee report for this. I'll send it out. I'll copy you on that as well for any comments or suggestions on it. And then once I get that okay from everybody, I will also contact Ed to ask him to draw up the legislation to make that change as well then.
Yeah, and if we could just make it, vote on it and make it an emergency so that he can get into the plan right away on the 26th, that'd be great, Rob.
Okay, I will ask Ed to do it I'll tell Ed to draw up the ordinance such that it's done as an emergency, and then I'll put in the recommendation that we're recommending it be done as an emergency as well.
Thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
All right, thank you, Rick. See ya.
Bye.
See ya.
See ya.
Okay, second topic I would propose us to try and tackle here is the zoning officer conversation. You guys, I sent out last night, and I apologize, it was sort of later. I was just still trying to get together the information, but some stuff that I found from Fairfax's website, and then I also included, what's in our current code book about our building commissioner. I have a suggestion here, and to bounce it off of this. So one of the things I liked about how Fairfax sets theirs up is if you look at the ordinance itself, it doesn't go in and list, here are all the responsibilities of the zoning officer. It just makes a reference to the what they call, so they're building off, they call it a building official, we call it a building commissioner. And our building commissioner also allows us to appoint an assistant. So, who can have some of the same responsibilities. That's why because Don doesn't qualify as a building commissioner because you have to have these 10 years of experience and be a registered professional engineer, yada, yada. So, we've been doing that by having, hey, Bill, what is Don's official title? Is it building administrator?
I guess building administrator. I think, we've sort of thrown, building administrator, building commissioner. I mean, it's whatever comes out of your mouth, basically.
Yeah, because I think technically it's not building commissioner. Because what I was thinking about doing is taking the Fairfax one and changing it, because it's very similar in the sense of, whereas this other guy retired, we're just going to say, Don Keys, longstanding building administrator, announced recently he is retiring from his position. Yeah, so I think I can change a lot of this and make it fit our situation, right? Without dramatically redoing stuff, because theirs also says they're contracting with Hamilton County. I just replaced that with XPEX. It's really a very parallel situation. But again, I like what the ordinance says is it doesn't get into laying out the specifics of that. It just references the code book where their building official, which is the same as our building commissioner, where those responsibilities are laid out. And then I think we could create our own separate document, sort of similar to the other thing I sent to you guys that has this, that showed here's what their zoning officer does. And I got that off of their website. That was the second, I sent you guys 3 documents. So, and it says top building official and yada, yada. And then it's right in the middle. It says duties of the zoning officer. So I think we could take that and make some modifications to that as well. And then I think we would be good with submitting some of that stuff and sort of saying, okay, here's this. Again, we're not changing the building commissioner because the building commissioner allows for appointments of what is the word it uses again? It uses an assistant, maybe appointed. So I think that would be, this is what we're doing here. Obviously, we've already done that with Don because Don didn't qualify as a building commissioner per se.
Yeah, and just FYI, he does have himself classified as a building department administrator.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So let me, if you're all right with this, let's take a look at the zoning thing, and I want to talk through that first. Okay, the zoning document, the ordinance, and because here's what I would propose changing in that document if you just follow along. So again, we're just going to say, I would recommend we say, whereas Don Keys, the longstanding building administrator for the village, announced recently he is retiring. You know, the building administrator responsible for enforcing both the village zoning code and all building codes applicable. Whereas the village is contracting with XPACs for the services of building inspector for the purpose of enforcing the building codes, blah, blah, blah. Whereas XPACs will not be providing services related to the enforcement of the zoning code. And whereas in lieu of appointing a new building administrator, the village deems it best to create the position of zoning officer for enforcing the village zoning code. So again, it's pretty easy to make those changes and incorporate our situation into theirs. In section 1, the things I would recommend we maybe change there, Bill and I have talked about this. I think having a contractor is really beneficial for us instead of having a village employee.
Mhm.
The reason these hours are in here, I reached out to Jenny Kaminer about that. The reasons their hours, they limited it to 29 hours in a given week, is so that the employee is still a part-time employee, not a full-time employee. Whereas if we are using a contractor, that doesn't become an issue for us. So we could strike out that whole sentence about any hour limitations or stuff like that. We just, that second sentence in section 1 goes away altogether. So it would just say the position of zoning official is hereby created. Oh, third sentence, I'm sorry. The position of zoning official is hereby created. The zoning official shall be a contractor paid by the village and shall work on an as-needed basis as requested by the mayor, administrator, or the designee, or as required by law, period.
Yeah. Hey, can I ask for clarification on something?
Sure.
So in your response to Paul Mace, you had stated that we had enough money to do a 40-hour, 50-week a year.
Yep.
And I just think that might be confusing some people based on the fact that we've talked about doing like this, under an hour. So I'm not questioning, I just want clarification on that because
So I was just trying to answer, what I was trying to answer Paul's question is, we have the budget for it. So the math, I was just telling Bill this earlier today, the math is $20 an hour, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, adds up to $40,000. That's how much we were paying Don. So we have a budget for that amount. Not that we are planning to spend it all. Ideally, we're spending less than that, but we do have a budget for $40,000 because that's Don's salary. And Don, we're not replacing Don, so that budget is still there.
Yeah, and the fact that you said budget, that's good. I just had a question from a couple of people. They're like, why does it say 40 when we're trying to do less than 40? And so I just wanted to, on the record for the clarification. So
yeah, that's all it is. The question Paul asked was, do we have the budget? What do we have a budget? And we have a budget to cover up to that amount. Ideally, we do not spend that, going to this variable cost structure will hopefully reduce that cost.
Thank you.
It might be worth noting also that, technically Don was not really in a 40-hour-a-week position, if you remember, because I think his pay was maybe as high as $40 an hour, but he was only supposed to work 20 hours a week. I mean, that's what it was based on. So if we were to switch to this model and get a zoning officer that we actually got 40 hours a week work out of, I think we're ahead. Yeah.
So again, what I'm proposing is just let's not have anything in there about hours.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it as on an as needed basis, as requested by the mayor, administrator, or designee, or as required by law. Period.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then we just remove the thing about the hours, but we do have a budget that covers up to 40 hours a week at $20 an hour. So, but ideally, we're not going to spend that whole budget.
Right.
Hey, Rob, okay, go ahead, Kelly. You're gonna finish
well,
off.
I was just going to point out the obvious, the fact that it's a contractor, we don't have to get into benefits or any of those excess costs. So that's it. Go ahead, Joe.
So Rob, let me make a suggestion here. Instead of us painfully trying to go through this ordinance and negotiating every line, or try to get comments, why don't you just take the lead on this thing and put together what you believe is reasonable? So, take the one from, Fairfax as your start.
Oh yeah.
And just go through and track your suggested changes and then share that with us later. And then we can, kind of comment on that because, I think this is a good start, and maybe we could look at to see what Newtown did also. And that would be, to try to come up with an ordinance to get, to move forward on it. But I think the ordinance is going to need a little bit of work about, okay, does some of this stuff apply to our circumstances or not? But I think that would be a good first start instead of trying to go through this, section by section.
Yeah, so I wanted to share with you, I think this applies. I think it's easy for us to apply. One thing I do want to mention here, so I'm happy to do that, Joe. I think the one thing I like about section 3 also in this code, I want to bounce this off you guys now, because I want to reapply this here. I like this because it talks about, to fill a vacancy, the second sentence, to fill a vacancy in the position, including as to the appointment of the initial zoning official, the mayor may appoint an interim zoning official, subject to the confirmation of the next regular meeting of council for a longer period as interim. So this allows for an interim zoning official before we actually lock and load on a final long-term zoning official.
I'm okay with that concept.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I like that about this as well, as it gives that.
It's a really good point.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's very important part of it.
Okay. So back to my general comments. So we got an ordinance we have to kind of come up with. We've got changes to our Mariemont code book that we have to come up with as far as this building commissioner section.
No, I don't know if we have to on that part though, Joe.
Well, we're not going to have a building commissioner anymore, are we? Or do we have?
No, we're not. But again,
do we have XPEC acting as building commissioner? I guess is
parts of it. Yeah. So again, here's how Fairfax is approaching it, and I like how they do it. They define this building official, right? And they say here's the different responsibilities of the building official within their. They put it actually in their zoning code, not their code book, but and so they lay out all those different things. That's on the one that I sent you guys. It says building official. Right, that's on the second page, starting at sort of halfway through there.
Got it.
So what they did, and I think we could mimic this, is they listed here's all the things that this building official should do, and then it doesn't get into in the code. It just says okay, and it can be somebody can be appointed to do this work, and that's where they said the zoning officer has some of those powers. And then the rest of the powers are done by Hamilton County for them. And so I think we're going to be doing the same thing, right? We're going to say XPEX is going to have some of these powers in terms of being able to do the review the plans and give the permits out and things like that. And then we're going to have the zoning officer do the other stuff. But it doesn't, because Joe, you made a really good recommendation I think last time where we said even what we define right now for zoning officer could actually change a little bit over time because some of the work is more clerical in nature. And so we could take the zoning officer role today, it's maybe this big, and we may shrink it a little bit and bring in some clerical help on the side where we can pay a lower rate than $20 an hour. And that's work that we have to do later this summer. We said we're going to wait to come back to that to look at potentially optimizing that work a little bit more to get the cost down and what permits make sense to continue to have. And then with the permits that exist, what the right fee is. So that's work to come later this summer. So this is sort of.
I guess what I'm hearing you say is that this section of the code book regarding the building commissioner is probably a work in process. That at some point we have to in essence reconcile what it says in our code book about the building commissioner / building department versus the way we're really going to run it in the future.
Well, I don't think so. I think it allows for this because the building commissioner says in here that you don't have to have a building commissioner, you can have an assistant instead.
Right.
So that this zoning officer will become one of those assistant type roles, instead of.
So basically the building commissioner becomes XPEX if that's the route we go.
If what? Say that again?
I said, so basically the role of the building commissioner.
Well, in previous state, Dennis Malone state, building commissioner did everything, right? Did zoning reviews, did plan reviews, did inspections, did everything.
Right.
We since then we've chopped it up. We said, okay, now we have Marty Simon and Bill Fiedler doing sort of the technical stuff, and we have the work that remained, which is not a really building commissioner, it's more like a building administrator.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's similar to that. We're now we potentially going to say, okay, that building administrator work, we're going to define it and say that's a zoning officer, and that work could shrink, but the building department work is still staying the same. It's just the subgrouping that we're doing underneath that umbrella of a building department.
Right.
Hey, Rob, just as a thought, though, we might want to change the language in there under the building commissioner as it would apply to the zoning officer, because going forward, we don't know for sure where this person may come from. that I think we should stipulate that that person doesn't have to be a resident of the village as it currently states now.
Right.
We fixed that already. So
Right,
this,
but
if you
just
remember,
needs to
Bill,
be fixed.
because we haven't recodified it yet.
Right.
This is what's the online version.
Right.
I just got the thing you sent me.
Right. And
Yeah, same.
I don't
yeah.
have, so I only have access to the online one. I don't have the hard copy.
All right.
We fixed that. So we went through, Rules and Law Committee went through and took everything out that any position requires besides an elected official. All elected
Right.
officials, you have to be a resident. All
All right.
appointed officials, we
All
were.
right, yeah.
Hey, Rob, I was just reading through this section where they talked about assistants, and in general, when you read through this whole building commissioner part of our code book, it almost gives the appearance or kind of gives the impression that there is a building commissioner, that there is somebody in that position. Okay, so somehow we have to morph this to call it maybe a building office, and that there will be assistants, because on the assistants line, it says, wherever necessary, the building commissioner shall have the right to take with him, which is kind of sexist, or her, I'm sorry, assistance necessary for the performance of his or her duties. So, I mean, what it looks like is you got a building commissioner that can grab assistance.
Right.
What we're kind of talking about is a building office that is going to have some contractors and a zoning officer that will perform the duties of the building office.
Yeah, so actually, I agree. What maybe the change would be, instead of calling it a building commissioner, maybe we just call this building department.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Rob, I mean, in the Fairfax code, they refer to the guy, I think, as building official, don't they?
Yes.
We could, a building official, I don't know whether that's,
Sure, we did. So, hey, Joe, just the sentence that I was referring to, that's under in our code book under B, the last sentence in B. In the absence of the building commission, and I think that's supposed to be commissioner, but it says commission, an assistant may be appointed by the mayor who shall perform all of the duties of the building commissioner, which are detailed as follows.
Okay, got it. Okay, now I see that.
So that's the sentence that when I read that, it's like, okay, the person doesn't have to have the official title of building commissioner. It can be somebody else.
It actually says in absence of a building commission.
I know, that's what I was saying. I think it's the wrong word. I think it's a typo there.
All right.
So
as long as our code book reflects what we're doing, and the other thing I'm half thinking in reading through this section is this section grants certain authorities to that building commissioner. And just to make sure we're still covering that base, that if somebody in the future comes in and says, oh, you know, XPEC can't do what they're doing, or the zoning officer can't do what they're doing because it's not, you know, you haven't granted that authority to these people who are performing those duties.
Right. And so that's where in the ordinance, this is where the ordinance says the zoning official hereby designated as the official responsible for carrying out the duties, responsibilities designated to the, and in our terms, we'd say the building commissioner in the code book.
Okay.
So this document, the Fairfax ordinance, is what gives the zoning officer, that's what makes that zoning officer the assistant who is appointed. You know, in the absence of the building commissioner, an assistant may be appointed, that's becomes the zoning officer.
Okay, I'm good with both of those then. Somehow if we reconcile that up and make sure we're covered between the ordinance and what we do with the code book. And then this other document that you sent, this thing.
Yep.
Is that, what is that technically called? Is that?
This is so the first half of it is, I literally took it off of their website. So, you know, like they're like us where you go to departments across the top, you can click on department, there's a drop down. So they had a section that's called building official, and I cut and paste what they have there. And then they had also a zoning department, and I cut and paste what they had on their website from there.
Okay, so this is more just a communication.
Correct. It's not an ordinance, it's not anything else like that. But I think it's something that, you know, we should probably put something similar in place for now for the zoning officer. And again, some of this may change as we later in the summer look at other ways that we could, you know, streamline the role by either having fewer permits or whatever, yada, yada. So I think it would be beneficial. And if you want to, I'm happy to take a first cut at that and email it to you guys for comments. What I did already, I drew online already. I started making notes on it. Is taking those things underneath duties of the zoning officer, and I'm happy to take a crack at that and send it to you, because like it doesn't have in there. I would add something like as necessary attend architectural review board and planning commission meetings, because the zoning officer is the person who would be doing that. So I'll be happy to do that. If you guys are okay with that, I'll take a
Yeah.
first cut at that.
And I would only have two recommendations at this point, is that try to use the resources at our disposal to kind of try to, instead of, the three of us, or should say the four of us, trying to come up with a definitive document. Let's talk to XPACs and see what they think, see what they can, advise us to do in these documents, because they probably have seen these things before,
Yeah,
and or talk
yeah.
to Ed. And so, that way we can have a document that's getting looked at before we get back to the next committee meeting. And we're not trying to draft it. You're in essence the coordinator of a drafting effort that's in bringing multiple talented people to the table.
So let me play back to make sure I got, so I'm going to take a first cut at so you're saying to ask them now to see if they have something like XPACs, ask XPACs?
Yeah, I mean, take the first cut and share it with them and see what they think. And if they're not comfortable in commenting, that's fine. And say, is there somebody that you're aware of that we can talk? I don't mind paying a consultant even on this thing to get this right. So if you got to spend a couple grand to get the right documents in place and right definition, and maybe XPAC knows somebody who can help us with this process.
Okay.
So-
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, so just to confirm, you take a first cut at it, we look at that, and then reach out to whoever we think we should. I can reach out to Jerry at XPEX, no problem. Just tell me when.
Okay, perfect. Hey, there was one other thing I think we needed to clean up from last time. There was what we submitted about the responsibilities that XPACs would have. We didn't put in there inspecting rentals. And I think it would be good. That was one of the ones Eileen actually had recommended that we included, and I did not move it up into that spot.
Okay, let's do that.
She had it lower in that spreadsheet, And so I think it would make sense to go ahead and have XPACs do the inspection of rental properties when they turn over, or every 3 years, or things like that.
Yeah, just let me say, Rob, I've called 3 times since you and I talked this morning, and I've not gotten a call back yet or connected, but I'm on it.
So if you can, if you just, once you hear
I'll
back.
follow up.
Yeah, just an email to all of us what happens, what
Yeah.
you hear from that. So but let me ask you guys, Kelly and Joe, are you okay with that as well? It was something that Eileen recommended that I think made sense, was have XPACs do inspection of rental properties.
Yes.
Okay, Joe.
My only question on it is what would they charge for that?
They have 3 different rates. So whichever one of those 3 roles they have, there was like 60, 65, and 70.
right.
So,
Well, I mean, obviously, Joe, that'd be one of the questions that I would ask. I mean, do they have a
Okay.
different charge for that, or is it the same charge as just doing an inspection?
Right. And then how do we recoup that? Is there any
Do we
way?
go to
Well,
the, yeah,
it's to the landlord. The landlord would pay.
Okay.
well, Bill, do we want to talk about the other aspect though, where there are times when a rentor could maybe ask for an inspection to be done?
If a renter determines that they're having a problem with their rental unit and they're not getting the proper response out of their landlord, and they call the building department to basically come down and do an inspection because they believe there's a code violation or something in process, this does get to, Rob and I were talking about this, gets to be a little funny. If we go down there and we do an inspection, but we don't really find anything, then I think the renter is on the hook to pay us for that inspection. However, if we do find something and we write a violation letter, then of course, I believe that would be on the landlord.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like that concept about loser pay, when you get the attorney. Because you don't, because I'm embroiled in this situation right now, and I don't want to talk about it because I know this is being recorded. But if renters are constantly calling up trying to make gripes to the building department, but they're just gripes, I think a way that you sort of put the soft brake pedal on that is to basically, you're going to have to pay for that inspection.
And we're not talking about a huge sum here.
Right.
I mean, again, the highest rate that they have is $75 an hour, and Bill and I were thinking it would take like an hour max to go in and
Easy.
inspect an
Easy
apartment.
an hour.
it's gonna be under $100.
Right. And again, if they know they're on the hook for $100, if they're in the litigation game, they call them nuisance lawsuits. So
Yeah.
if somebody is just filing nuisance complaints and are not, determined to be founded, and real, they should be paying for it, because we'll get a call every hour.
No, that's
If
what I'm
it's free.
saying. Yeah,
I mean,
that's
yeah.
exactly it.
Right.
And so I'm completely good with the concept of charging them if it, either way, somebody's going to pay. If there's a
Right, not us.
violation, the landlord's paying, and if there's not a violation, the renter's going to pay. But it's not a bad way to get, in essence, to create a situation where we have better enforcement in the
Yeah.
future.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think this good, because I'm gonna include that in the committee report that we submit as well, okay? That's gonna be an addendum, sort of, I didn't catch it last time because I just copied and pasted from the top of that spreadsheet, and that was a little bit further down was this renter, expects doing the rental property inspection, so I'm gonna
Bump
put
that up.
in there as well, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's it for the zoning officer. Like I said, I will take a first cut, send that stuff to you for comments, and you guys provide those back to me. Third topic, healthcare premiums. I sent you guys earlier in the week
Yep.
two things. One was the Haran benchmarking, and the other was the spreadsheet where I tried to summarize some of that stuff. In the summary, I did the same, same as last year. These are the same people that we benchmarked with, and I put an asterisk next to those people who we also benchmark salaries with. So
Indian Hill's really the only one we didn't.
correct. And at the bottom, I don't have data for Terrace Park and Wyoming. Those are the other ones we do the salary benchmark with. We
Right.
don't have healthcare information for them. But
Okay.
again, we have Indian Hill. And in our plan sort of closely, we actually used Indian Hill as sort of last year we used it sort of as a model to build ours from. And I think it's worked out really well. I first and foremost, I want to say that I think the model we've gone to allowing the employees to choose which level they want to have.
Why is someone here?
Kelly,
Sorry, a big truck just pulled into my yard and I have absolutely no idea.
well, I hope they patch it. Drop
Oh,
that clutch and shoot some dirt up.
As long as it's not pulling into your living room, don't worry about it.
I tell you, it absolutely blows my mind, the people that will drive down the street that don't live here and get all this dirt and stuff. And people ride, I saw a guy ride his bike down it. Have you seen the street? It's just gravel and dust.
Yeah. Okay, so enough about your street.
Sorry.
So I sent to you also when I sent the summary spreadsheet that I put the stuff into, I have our standard template at the beginning, then I created a tab where I put everybody who has a platinum A, first, when I looked at ours, that was the one place that seemed like we might be a little bit on the low side, was in the platinum A, the employee share of the premium.
You're
So
looking at the breakdown for the center of local government, or are you still on your
I'm
spreadsheet?
on my spreadsheet where I summarize it.
Okay. All
So
right.
going left to right, Amberley Village, so I'm looking at Platinum A only. Amberley Village is paying 19%. Their employees are paying 19%. Evendale is very similar to a Platinum A if you go look down and see what kind of deductibles and out-of-pocket maxes are and stuff like that. So there's anywhere from 11 to 14%. Fairfax is 10, 11%. Glendale's is weird. I don't understand why there is a 3% versus they charge more for the 14 for the gold. But anyway, Indian Hill is at 14 and 15. We're at 10. So it seems like we're a little bit on the low end there. And that's why I did that second tab. It has anybody who had a Platinum A that was in that benchmarking just to see where everybody stands. And I calculated to the far right an average. And it came out, an average of 12% as the employee premium share of the premium. And that to me seems like maybe a little bit more appropriate for where we would be for
Hey,
platinum.
Rob, can you give me an idea of magnitude if we were to take the employee premium share up from 10% to say 12%? How much dollars are we talking?
Well, so at the bottom, you can see the premiums at the bottom. Those are monthly premiums.
Yeah,
So if you
but I
look
mean,
at-
just overall. I mean, and here's where I'm asking the question from is, we hit the employees last year with 0 to 10%.
Yep.
And right now we're right even with Fairfax virtually in all the categories. As
Yep.
far as HSA contribution, as far as the employee premium share, So I would say that, okay, yeah, we're a little bit below average by 2%. And if it isn't really, really significant dollars at this point, I probably would just leave it at 10% for one more year.
Okay. It's not, because my understanding, I don't know exactly, because, you know, it's private information about who signs up for what, right?
Right.
You know, in terms of what plans they have and stuff like that. I believe at one point in time, we had like 3 people who were signing up for Platinum A. So it will not be significant. So let's just assume that it was employee plus spouse, 1450 times 0.02 times 12 times, if there are 3 people, it's a little over $1,000 we'd save.
I would leave it where it's at this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
we got so many things going on. Why add on to it?
Okay.
yeah, I have
Good
to
with that.
agree with that.
So just FYI, I don't know if you guys are interested. I think that they're having their meeting. If you recall last year, they have a meeting where they decide on the percent increase. We can't, you know, it is what it is. We take what it is. The only thing we're recommending is if we're changing what policies we offer or what percent premium. So that's the end of this month. If you guys, I haven't gotten a date yet from them. If you wanted to listen in, I can forward that on to you. But that's, remember, if you remember, I know Kelly, you were on that call last year.
Yeah.
Where they talked
Yeah.
about and they decided, okay, we're gonna, because it was 9.9% is what they increased the premium by last year. And so it was a discussion around that. We just sort of listened in, but it's not like we had really much to say because we're not on their board. We're just listening as a participant.
Right.
So. Okay, so I don't think there's any. I guess I'll write up a report for this. Just sort of say we're planning to keep it the same. That's the only decisions we have to make. We're not changing what the plan is or what the percentages are. So, and we'll just wait to hear what the increase in premium is.
Yeah, there's not a lot of control we have over that.
No. But I'll write up a report and send it to you guys so that we can just make that official that we're recommending
To
stay
say
as is,
10%.
status quo.
Okay.
Okay, final topic we had was village administrator. I shared with you a document that Bill and I have been working on, but before getting into that, I mean, I know Bill and Kelly, you guys were working together on another, what, Bill, you gotta go, okay.
No, there's a lady here. Just go ahead. I'll be right back.
Okay. So, again, I'd worked with Bill on this, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to share what you've been working on, because we had identified, you know, the different areas where we thought there was an opportunity to improve what, well, actually, in some of these things, it's not happening today. So it's actually just, you know, getting some of these activities that are not occurring today, how best to go about doing that.
Yeah. Just one quick question on your sheet here where it says fiscal. Is the concept that we would have a combination of village administrator and a fiscal officer into one role?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, so-
And when you say potentially, what would be the decision-making factor on that? Or, I mean, what parameters would we make that decision?
I
Capacity.
can answer that.
I think
At the end of the day, you try to come up with the responsibilities that you would like to have an administrator fill.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending upon who you identify as being the administrator, you may need to figure out, okay, does that person have a lot of fiscal experience or does that person not have a lot of fiscal experience? And then you figure out how to marry up that person with the right people who might have that fiscal experience. But in general, they should have some idea about the reports or the information they need to administer the village. They may not be an accountant, they may not be a bookkeeper, but they know what reports they need to administer the village.
Well, would they generate those themselves or go elsewhere to get them?
Again, it depends upon who the person is. You may find somebody who's a CPA and is an administrator, so they could potentially do all that stuff.
And so, yeah, so one of the things I did here is I didn't want to say, and I talked to Bill about this, I didn't want to say that the village administrator has to do the work his or herself. They're responsible to make sure the work gets done. And that's the important thing. I think, you know, if we go down the road of getting a village administrator, you have to empower them to figure out how to take the organization and get the most out of it, get the most stuff out of it. You know, maybe some of this work gets delegated to other people who report to the village administrator. So again, the village administrator may not do the actual work his or herself, but she or he has given it to somebody else who then provides it to the village administrator to be able to, present it to us. And because again, like, when Bill and I talked, one of the things that we really, really need help with is, so how are we doing so far this year? I was just looking at the reports that Eli sent out yesterday. So, we're like 200,000. I wrote this down. So, year to date, we've collected $103,000 more than we did it last year, but our expenses are $193,000 more than last year. So is that a problem? Do I need to worry about that or not? And we don't have that. And that's something that we really sorely are lacking today. And then, again, if we say the village administrator is responsible for providing that, he or she does not have to do it themselves, but they need to make sure it gets done and given to us by somebody. So,
and Rob, what you're talking about is somebody who can do some level of analysis of the numbers and let us know. And off the top of my head, the question about spending this year versus last year, I haven't done a deep dive on it yet, but I would think it's probably the Petoskey project that's driving the numbers this year. If we looked at spend 2021 versus 2020.
Yep.
Yeah, but
So-
we had a major road project each year, pretty much.
We
So-
didn't
so
have
we're
one
not-
in 2020, but
let's not solve that here. We don't need to reconcile it here. It was just an example.
Rob's point is true, that all we get is this base report and we get no analysis behind it.
And we need that. We need council and the mayor need to know, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And,
Right.
we're over on revenue. Is that expected to continue, or is that a one-time blip or whatever? We need perspective.
Exactly.
We need
Exactly.
perspective on this stuff.
Well, yeah, yeah.
And
We
so
have we have a saying on the accounting side, financial statements are interesting about what they tell you, but what they don't tell you is almost frightening. Because all it is a summary number on a piece of paper, and there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes.
A lot of stuff driving it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we need to understand that. And so again, that's what, when Bill and I were putting this together, and that's actually the third bullet point underneath that is report to council throughout the year, the status of the budget from both a revenue and expense standpoint, proactively identify and share any concerning trends and possible actions to address. So again, the village administrator will be responsible for ensuring that happens.
So Rob, let's get back to Bill's back at on camera now, back into joining the meeting. I think you were going to ask some questions about, what have we found out in the last 90 days as we've been looking at options, whether we go an administrator or.
Yeah, so I showed this stuff. I know you guys were working on something, and I just didn't know if you guys had, if you wanted to share something with us about what your research has turned up.
Well, Bill, you want to talk about Ken?
Well, I think we already mentioned this, or we talked about this briefly, I know. I mean, we did have a meeting with Ken Geis, who is a resident here in the village, and he is, works for, I think it's Butler County and
Union Township.
Union Township and things like that. I mean, he's essentially been doing economic development research and analysis for those counties, I guess, for any number of years. And we sort of called him in, and actually this is before the Kellogg story, broke, to essentially sort of just get, obviously without kind of a spur of the moment kind of a thing, get his thoughts and his feelings on, hey, look at our industrial area down there, look at that district, look at the situation that we're in down there, with Kellogg and with the other private owners. What would realistically be some of the options that we might want to look at going forward? And I felt it was quite productive.
So you found maybe somebody who could do economic development. What about all the other activities? We got a whole, because, the whole list we came up with, the things that are not happening today, like the fiscal stuff we've just been talking about, like grant writing, like communications, like human resources, like overseeing the other departments. I mean, that's the thing, to be very honest. I mean, I'm looking for a holistic solution.
No, I understand, because and Joe refers to it, as the concierge approach, and that,
Right.
and obviously there's a big element, in calling it that, we were just focusing in on economic development in a given area within the village. Yes. We
Right.
were, talking about that.
Right.
The grant writing thing, I mean, that's, apparently there's some gal in Amberley Village that does it professionally, right? She looks for and writes grants for Amberley Village. And I think she's either on a contractual basis or it's a per grant basis. I don't know which.
I'm pretty sure it's a per grant basis.
So she will come to the village and walk around and identify for us where we can get grants for stuff, and what projects would maybe be would make sense, and so she knows all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, apparently. I mean, and obviously she's been doing it for Amberley Village now, I guess, for any number of years. So yeah, I mean, you'd have to have her come in here and get her familiar with the village and, talk with us and whatever, to see, what specifically would work or what could be available, for a village like Mariemont. Yeah, I mean, I guess, apparently she's quite good at it.
Well, I mean, why can we meet with her? Just
We
kind of
could.
talk to her and at least
Of
have
course.
that
Yeah,
one
of
way or
course.
another information?
Of course we could.
Yeah, I mean, that might be, again, I agree that all these functions do need to be covered. I think having a conversation with a couple of people that are experts on this, for example, this woman from Amberley Village, if nothing else, gives us a direction to go, gives us a little feedback. And then, maybe having a conversation with Ken Geist again, just, so we all get the feedback. Just,
But
if nothing else, to give us direction.
Okay, so direction in terms of, like, help me understand, direction of,
Well-
you're saying in terms of opportunity areas for us, you think, or?
Yeah, or just kind of get more into economic development. We know that that needs to be probably our priority.
But so I'd be happy to go ahead and meet with those two people. But I keep going back to, there are so many pieces that aren't happening there. And if we sit there and do these one-offs for every little piece,
Sure.
I don't think we get the good synergy. So I'm okay with having a conversation with these people to help us understand what are the opportunities. But I don't think quite honestly, I don't think it's the solution. I think I'm looking for a solution that solves one person who can help solve all these problems.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
And somebody like Ken Geist, if he lives in the village, we can always pick his brain on economic development. So we're not going to lose that ability by if we bring on an administrator, because that and again, we do this all the time in the village where we find talented people and bring them to the table.
Yeah.
And I'll add a couple things onto this list here, Rob, as I thought about it, responsibilities. And one of the things that I think we're sorely missing an opportunity is on project management. As we find projects we want to do, who's going to manage those projects? And we're running into that on the pool right now. We're literally having our pool commission members being the liaison leader, whatever you want to call it, on some of the various things that are going on down there. And so, we need somebody who can do project management, somebody that can, once the idea has been approved, go get it done. Don't bother the council members, don't bother the pool commission members, just go get the thing done, or, manage the project. If you need to bring somebody on, they're the person who's going to be managing.
You're saying add that to this.
Yeah, that's the administrator deal.
Okay.
Project manager.
Well,
the other thing, go ahead, Rob.
No, I just want to make sure on that point. So the third item down underneath administrative, I had oversee any village projects assigned by the mayor. Do you think, so you're saying you think?
I would make a separate category for that, just so
Okay.
it stands out. This is one of the critical functions we want the administrator to do, is project management.
Got it. Okay, I will do that. I will make a separate bullet point just for.
And then the other separation I would do would be support the resident commissions that we have out there. Whether it's the pool commission, whether it's the South 80, whether it's the tennis, the tree advisory, be the liaison for each of those organizations, because, we're, and Bill, this as well as I, these questions pop up all the time about how do I do this and how do I do that? And they come up with ideas. And to me, the administrator should be the one vetting those ideas before it gets to council or gets to the mayor. We don't have enough time to be doing all this stuff. And just today, I'm trying to run down information about, events involving alcohol at the pool. And I'm finding out some stuff that is fairly fascinating.
Hmm, yeah.
Why does a council member have to run that stuff down?
Good, it's a valid point.
So help me, I'm trying to make sure I capture this right, Joe. I wrote support existing commissions, or help me, what's the word you want me to use?
Support existing, I call them resident commissions, because in most
Yeah.
cases, it's residents that are serving on it.
Yeah.
And, while they may be very good about that specific commission that they're working on, they don't understand how the village operates. They may not understand, state law regarding village operation, the rest of stuff. They need a conduit, a liaison that they can talk to and get that stuff figured out.
Okay, so it's like addressing their questions and connecting them to the right resources or whatever.
I use a general category of support.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a separate bullet. That's a separate bullet point then as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so support resident commissions.
Okay. Okay.
Or oversee, I don't know, which would be better, oversee?
No, I don't know that you need to oversee them. I mean,
These are
Okay.
just general concepts at this point, but again, I'm
Right.
just trying to highlight to me that I think that the big things we've got out there that I think an administrator could do that would take pressure off council and take pressure off the mayor. Because, we got these resident commissions that are very good and they're very passionate and that's what we want, but we have to figure out how to support them better.
okay. Okay, so I'm adding 2 bullet points, one for project management, one for support resident commissions as separate items.
And on that grant writing bullet point that you have, I would just make it a general grants. And part of that is identify projects and identify sources of funds. And I think you got a little bit of that about working with foundations, endowments, and for potential funding. But identifying those projects is the key component of this. Bill, you and I talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
What projects do we have right now? And we're trying to work to develop some projects to go after our Nature's Works grant. But the key thing is find the right project for the right grant program.
Well, yeah, that makes it fit.
And the grant writing itself is easy compared to
Right,
that
so just
front-end
change that to
process.
grants.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, I got
The
it.
other piece of that process, which is critical too, is some grants are fully funded, some grants need a match. And then where's the match dollars going to come from?
Mhm.
So, I mean, again, this is where you need a holistic approach, because just saying, go get me some grants, I'm not sure that's going to work. You need somebody who is really in tune with what's going on in the village, what our needs are, because we don't want to just go get grants to get grants. Let's get the grants that address the problems that we have.
So I hear you and I agree with you. So I'm going to change the 2 bullet points under that. Like you said, one is identify projects and then identify sources of funds. And I'll reword these to line up with those then.
Yeah, and I would,
Identify projects and identify sources of funds.
just change it to grants from grant writing.
Right, agree. Okay, so it sounds like we're all aligned that we do need to have a village administrator. Again, it is more of a holistic answer to this issue we're facing. Again, there could be specific areas where we might get a little help in terms of Ken Geis, or if there's somebody who's a grant writer if we find an administrator who's maybe that's not their strength, is actually writing the grant, we can go ahead and have somebody help write the grant. But again, we need somebody who's going to help us identify the projects and the sources of funds.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like we are agreeing that we should have a village administrator. I mean, Kelly, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I guess the other question is, do we make this a full-time role or a part-time role? I mean, I'd like to see, I'm sorry, I'm not sure, I know we're talking about a fiscal officer down the road. I think the need is more pressing than down the road.
Well, the thing is, if we hire a fiscal officer now, so I have 2 things, 2 really issues that. What does Joni do? Joni's job with all the payroll, because again, if you look at the Fairfax definition of fiscal officer, they handle the poll payroll, they handle the clerk. And actually, that's part of the law when we're not actually complying with, is if you get rid of a treasurer and you replace it with a clerk and fiscal officer, it's supposed to be some of the same work. And so we're not doing that, but that's a sidebar thing. So their fiscal officer does all the payroll, does all the meeting notes for all the different committees.
Okay.
And so what Bill and I talked about is, so yeah, ideally, this role would be able to absorb, or not absorb, but be able to find a way that we could save some money on the fiscal officer side
Okay,
until such time as one of either, Joni or Allison's roles becomes available, one of them retires or whatever, and
right.
then you go hire a full-time fiscal officer, right? That's
Yeah, Rob, listen, in general, I hear what you're saying. I think more or less, we're probably in agreement for the need for, some type of an administrator. I kind of think though that, I know Joe's going to disagree with this a little bit because he and I were talking about this the other day. I think there's a way though that, that we can find a happy median. I want a much stronger emphasis. I don't care what you call this guy. We don't have to call him the fiscal officer. He can be hired as the village administrator. I just want him to have a stronger emphasis or background in financial matters, so that when I ask him, look, I need you to produce a financial statement for me to help me identify or see trends before they come up and bite me in the ass.
Yep. So I agree. I want to finish my other thing because I said there was a
Sorry,
second reason I wanted the village administrator, and that is I think it's important. So not only the whole question about what does Joni do if we have a fiscal officer, but then also I think we need somebody at the top to help run the organization. To be really honest, I think there's an opportunity for us to run as an organization a little bit better, because it's not, Bill's getting stretched and pulled in a lot of different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to have somebody who can help run the organization and be responsible for that. And to be really honest with you, if you have somebody at the top then who's running that, it lets them to be able to identify how best to utilize the organization to get that work done. So, again, there may be pockets in an organization where somebody could pick up some of the responsibilities, because again, we all know Eli has said she wants to stop at the end of this year in terms of assistant fiscal officer. She wants to keep working IT, but she wants to stop that. Well, if you have a village administrator, maybe they can find how that work can get absorbed within the current organization. We don't have to go hire another assistant fiscal officer. But you can only do that if they're the boss. If you're a peer and you're trying to tell your peer, hey, I think you ought to pick up this other work. What do you think the answer is going to be? Yeah. And so
I can't say that in this meeting.
Exactly. And so, but if you have somebody at the top who's looking across all the different departments and they're saying, hey, I think there's a way for us to do this work more efficiently or whatever, and can find a way to take on some of the work without, and actually to reduce some of the other pay that we're doing right now. Again, it'd be great if they could find a way to take on Eli's work without us having to go find a replacement for the assistant fiscal officer role. And if this person, to go to Bill's point, if this person's really good fiscally, maybe they could take on Tony's stuff too. I don't know, potentially. So I think that we ought to leave that, I agree with Bill. Right now, we need somebody who's got strong fiscal, but I think this person needs to be at the top of the organization so that they can get the most out of the total organization and make sure that the people are doing their, that it's not going to, all the work is not all going to fall to this person. By putting them at the top, they can help identify where the work can get done so that it does get done, and they'll be accountable to make sure it gets done, but they can run that show.
To Kelly's point though, and let me just throw this out there. Is this village big enough to need this guy full time? I think she was trying to ask, is this a full time or a part time?
So Newtown tried it. Newtown tried a part-time role and it did not work. They tried it for 2 years. And I went and talked to them and it did not work. And so if you look around us, and where I have a sheet that has some of the other places that have, and almost everybody else has a village, Amberley Village, they have one. Fairfax has one. Glendale has one. Indian Hill obviously has one. Madeira has one. Newtown tried a part-timer for 2 years, didn't work. Terrace Park has one. Wyoming has one. All of those people have village administrators. They're all similar size to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's really only us in Newtown are about the only ones who don't have one. Columbia Township has a village administrator. It's not a village administrator, it's a township administrator, but it's the same thing.
Well, they're substantially bigger, but
I just went through a whole list of people we benchmark with: Amberley Village, Glendale, Wyoming, all these other areas. Fairfax is smaller than us. So Terrace Park is smaller than us, and they have.
Well, but again, the guy in Terrace Park, I think, is their police chief.
It is their police chief, And
Yeah,
so if I would love to run as cheaply as they do, because they have a fiscal officer and an administrative assistant. They don't have one of each. They run really bare bones, and I don't know how they do it.
yeah, they do.
I
Yeah,
don't know how they do it. So I just want to answer Kelly's question. All these other villages that are similar size have them. It's like us and Newtown are the only ones who don't. Newtown, to your point, Kelly, did try to do a part-timer 2 years in a row, didn't work, and so they've stopped. So I think having a village administrator will more than pay for itself. So
well, I think that's the key thing. I mean, because
Yes.
this is, I mean, what have we got salary guidelines this? I know we threw out 100,000 at one point. Is that still where we're at?
yeah, right around there. So I sort of put bookends.
We,
So
we don't know what the salary is going to be until we start talking to people and
Sure.
figure first, and again, I think what we're trying to do right now is establish this framework about what we're looking for.
Mhm.
Okay. It may be impossible to find somebody who's going to hit each one of these framework items. And then that's where you have to kind of say, okay, if I get the right person that hits 7 of the 8, how do I cover the 8th?
Mm.
And then what's it going to cost me to have somebody, take care of these items that we have decided, that we think are important for an administrator to do. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, probably there's 2 critical roles of this administrator. One is going to be the grants, because I've seen some numbers from our neighbors about grants that have been pulled in by the administrators, and it more than pays for the position. And the second thing is going to be economic development, which we really aren't doing anything on right now. And yeah, we could talk to Ken Geis, but who's going to be responsible for actually getting this stuff done and they're held accountable for it?
Right. No, it's a valid point. I'm not arguing with that by any manner of means.
but Kelly, to answer your question, yeah, there's one of our neighboring and village administrators is paid $100,000. So that is right now, that's a good ballpark number to go with.
Yeah.
But to Joe's point, the grant money that I've seen with village administrators, what they've delivered, more than pays for that. And again, if we can get some of this help from the fiscal side, I think that will also, help generate savings that we can, that within the village that will help us as well.
And I think I have to say that I think that is key at this point in time.
Which is key. I just want to make sure.
Which is,
Not
yeah, which is,
filling
yeah,
in
not-
some of the, the fiscal responsibilities.
Yeah.
Because I think,
totally agree.
I know we're lacking in economic development. I know we're lacking in grants, but we're really lacking in the fiscal, especially if Eli's going to be leaving at the end of the year.
Yep. And so that's sort of why I had that dotted line across the bottom. I mean, the ones above the dotted line, in my view, and when Bill and I were working about, those are sort of must-haves. The bottom 2 are sort of nice to haves.
Right. Okay.
And so that's why I drew that dotted line there.
Okay. I just thought you had a weird page break.
Nah. That was my demarcation line.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
Okay.
Okay,
So how do we want to wrap this up today? I mean, because I got another meeting coming up at 4. I got to make some phone calls with it. So
Sure. So I will update this sheet. It sounds like we are agreeing that we think that we ought to get a village administrator that again delivers on at least these top 4 things. I'm going to add project management in there, and then support resident commissions in there as well.
Okay.
Well, hey, Rob, when you said top 4 things, you meant in the broad categories,
Yeah.
not the top 4 bullet points.
No. Well, again, above the dotted line.
Yeah, I
So-
got you.
Yeah.
Just
So
one-
administrative, fiscal, grant writing, and economic development.
And we're going to add to that project management and support resident commissions. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but you're going to put that under administrative, right?
Well, I would, here's what I would do. Joe, I would say, let's put support resident commissions underneath administrative. But I do agree with Joe that maybe project management is a big enough one.
Standalone.
Yeah. So I would say, let's have 5 major categories above the dotted line with project management being added to that list.
Okay.
And I'll make a sub bullet point under administrative that's going to say support resident commissions. Okay.
Okay.
I would make it a separate bullet point, but I'm okay with your proposal.
Okay. So
What are you doing?
then I'll make those changes. I'll email that out to you guys again. And again, what I would say is, I think we're ready to go ahead and recommend to council in a finance committee report that we ought to start. So, I forgot to say, so I did reach out. So Bill and I talked about this as well, is, so the question is, okay, if we want to do this, how do you go about and find one? And so I've reached out to some people. I've talked to Jenny Kaminer, I've talked to Melissa Taylor, and I've talked to Tom, the guy in Silverton, Tom Carroll. He's the village administrator in Silverton. Mm-hmm. And so you can post these on OML, Center for Local Government, and there's an Ohio Township Association. Mm-hmm. And I was just talking to Mike Lemon earlier today, and he said he thinks we'll be able to find somebody that way. And I have, from Center for Local Government, I have 19 examples from other municipalities in this area where they've posted for a village administrator role. So if we agree to move and make the recommendation, I have a boatload of examples that we can use to sort of, how do you advertise for the role? Right. And
well, then something that's currently on the Center for Local Government, or this is archive stuff? It
spans all of it. Okay. He just gave, the guy there was very helpful, and he just said, I said, I'll take whatever you got. And so he gave me, I don't know if they all have dates or not. I've got a pile of them here. So Bill,
I think those are the starting places, right? I mean, before we go to this headhunter thing, right?
Oh yeah.
I didn't mention the headhunter yet.
No, I know. I'm just saying it has been mentioned, maybe not here today, but this gives us 3 or 4 good places to start.
Yeah. No, I just posted it on Nextdoor Mariemont. We're all set.
Yeah, there we go. And you're going to interview all the candidates. You're going to interview all the candidates who show up on Nextdoor Mariemont too, right?
And maybe Joe's got a bulletin board down at the office.
But talking to Mike Lemon today, he thought if we used those 3 methods, he definitely thinks we can find somebody. So, but to Bill's point, this Tom Carroll also said, if you go down that path and you can't find anybody who fits, he gave me the name of 4 different headhunter firms who could help us as well. But that's only if we can't succeed in finding it for free by posting it on these other government agency web, things type stuff. Sure. So again, what I would recommend. Next steps is I'll update this village administrator side, send it to you. I'm going to write up a recommendation from the finance committee saying that we think we're recommending that we should go hire a village administrator. The village administrator is appointed by the mayor, and appointed by the mayor, approved by council. So that's actually Ohio Revised Code type stuff. So, and that actually already exists in our code book, right? The village administrator already exists in our code book, and it's a copy paste from ORC.
Yeah.
So I'm going to recommend that we go ahead and start that process of, preparing something to post on those places, and that, Bill, go ahead, once we get this posted, Bill, I'm assuming, Bill, you'd want to be the one who does the interviewing and talking to them.
Well, hold on there a minute. That was going to be my next question. I mean, like, once we get some candidates responding back to us, are the 4 of us going to do the interviewing? I mean, how are we going to structure that? I mean, obviously, I want to be part of it.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question.
But is it going to be?
So again, yeah, you have to appoint. I would like to participate as well. I don't think we want to have a whole panel.
Can I make a recommendation here?
Yep.
So why don't Bill and Rob and Mike Lemon do it? Ask Mike if he's willing to help us in this process to interview, since he's got 20 years experience as a administrator.
That's actually not a bad idea.
And then let the 3 of you do it. I mean, I don't need to be in the interviews. Kelly, I'm not sure where your head's at, but I mean, I would rely on the 3 to vet the candidates and see if there's some viable people out there.
And so if we went down that path, Kelly, if we narrowed it down, we could always set up something. If you narrowed it down to 1 or 2 people, you could always talk to them at that point in time.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
because that's a good point. I mean, probably if you narrow it down to say 2 candidates, something like that, you're going to want to bring them back for a second interview, that follow-up interview, and maybe during that, maybe all 4 of you.
There's only 3 of us, Bill.
Well, I meant Mike too, but.
Okay.
Bill can't count.
Okay, so that will be in the recommendation as well. And Well, how about this? How about let's just say we'll start the interviewing process. I don't think we have to dictate.
Yeah, I don't
what the
think you have to
interview
go
process
so
will be.
far into the
Right.
weeds with it. We're
Yeah,
just gonna.
I agree. I agree. Let's just start the
Start the
post.
search.
Yeah, start the search because search because it's going to be involved posting the role out there and then starting to interview people. So start the search.
Right,
Got it.
yeah, we're not quite ready to delve down into the specifics of it.
Okay.
And the search is also going to give us some idea about salary ranges too. I mean, that'll figure that one out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will write up a recommendation for that as well and send it to you guys.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah, it's going to be, I know I'm going to be doing all weekend. That's for sure.
You got good notes?
Well, the nice thing about these meetings being recorded is that you can go back and watch them again. I do like that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we'll enjoy it while it lasts, guys, because this is coming
No,
to an
no,
end.
I'm going to make a motion that we record all of them.
Oh, well, we can record them, sure.
Have them come into the council check. Never mind.
Why not?
Okay. So those are the 4 topics. We're not allowed to talk any other topic, no other topics. So I will get those, I will change some of these documents, send them to you, write up reports, send them to you. We need to get them in by next Friday, a week from today. So please get back to me pronto when I send these to you for comments. Okay.
I
Good.
always-
Hey,
I've got to make some phone calls here for the next meeting. So
Okay,
okay,
all right.
we're done.
Sid,
Thank
Well,
you.
hold on a minute. Hey, Joe, I may not be there for the entire meeting.
I don't think because we haven't been able to develop enough information yet, we won't be making any decisions. I'm just going to bring the other committee members up to what I found out so far.
Okay.
So, we'll probably do another committee meeting next week to try to reach decisions on everything. But there's been a fair amount of information on each of the topics that I want to share with the other committee members and, see what other things I need to run down to try to get a final decision next week. So,
and that's Marcy and Avia are the other members of the Health and Rec, right, Joe?
Yep.
Okay.
all right, cool. All right.
All right.
Cool. See you then.
See ya, bye.
Bye.